Hello and welcome to Grand Tactician, the Civil War, a new game on this channel. And we're going to start with the Whiskey and Lemons DLC, as it allows us to work through the ranks of the military. This is also a good option for me to get familiar with the game, as I lack a lot of knowledge on it so far. If you have tips or feedback or if the audio is off, please let me know. Also a quick thank you to the developer who allowed me to use the amazing soundtrack and sent me logos for the thumbnail. This episode is going to be in episode 0, where we're going to build our character, and in the next episode we're going to start with the actual gameplay. We're going to fight as the Union, and the difficulty is set on hard with the enemy aggressiveness on mediocre. I think this should give us a good gameplay experience. Our policies are set on historic, meaning that we have the Kansas Free State, as well as the industry focus and the Indian Wars. June 1st, 1861, Eastern Theater. This is a regiment scale campaign on the Eastern Theater of the Civil War. The bombardment of Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor, South Carolina ignited the American Civil War on April 12, 1861, after President Lincoln calls for 75,000 militia to serve for 3 months. A few days later, further slave states seceded from the Union. North Carolina, Virginia, Arkansas and Tennessee all eventually joined the Confederate States of America, while Missouri and Kentucky declared neutrality in the conflict. So far, large-scale fighting has not erupted, as both sides have been recruiting militias and deploying them in preparation for the inevitable confrontation. Union gunboats have engaged Confederate castle defenses in Virginia coast, but to little effect. But in start of June 1861, both sides are planning land campaigns in Virginia. The state of Virginia is divided in support, as the western part is pro-Union, while the areas east of the Appalachian Mountains are stout supporters of the Confederate cause. General George B. McClellan, commander of the Union Department of the Ohio, was fast to secure the western parts of Virginia, crossing the Ohio River without resistance. To counter Confederate raids, McClellan has pushed his forward elements into Grafton, ready to push out the small Confederate garrisons that are still organizing near Philippi. But the main focus is further to the east, where the capital cities of both sides are separated only by some 100 miles. Here the Confederates have made their defensive preparations by moving 2 of their largest army to northern Virginia. General Joseph E. Johnston is guarding the mouth of the Shenandoah Valley, facing Union's Pennsylvania troops gathering on the other side of the Potomac. The hero of Fort Sumter, General P.G.T. Beauregard, has deployed his Army of the Potomac close to Washington, D.C., at a railroad junction called Manassas. In Washington, D.C., the Army of Northern Virginia is gathering under the command of General Irvin McDowell. His forward elements have already crossed the Potomac and captured Alexandria in May 24. With the armies growing and drilling, President Lincoln is keen to end the rebellion by moving Union troops south from Washington, D.C. to capture Richmond. The time is ticking, as the 3-month militia recruited in April and May will be available only for a few more months. Tension is rising, with the war cry "On to Richmond" on the lips of the Union soldiers and citizens alike. Will the Southern troops offer resistance, or will the armies give into the weight of numbers? This is a situation that we have to deal with, and I think it would be fun to model my character more or less after myself to find out how a 21st century guy would be seen back in the day. I've quickly picked a portrait and a frame that looked rather nice, and I selected a small flag that should be noticeable on the battlefield. Our general is going to be called Wilhelm Schneider, one of the most German names that I could imagine. Our nickname for now is going to be the Prussian, as the region of Germany where I live was part of Prussia during that time. We have basically just came over the pond to join the fighting, and no one knows anything about us. So I think it would be fitting that other people would simply refer to him as that Prussian guy. And when we have to answer the question to our background, we will simply say that we had a life outside of America, but adventurous as we are, we moved over here to take part in the American Civil War. As a non-American, how did you end up receiving an American officer's rank and position? Question B and C state previous military experience that I do not have. Option C means that we have epic adventures and a fancy military outfit, and also that is something that I do not have. So I think it would be best to select option A. As many of the volunteers were immigrants and originally my countrymen, they choose to elect me to lead them thanks to my fame and connections. Fame and connections is something that we do not have, but I think it still fits. Which of the following best describes your motivation to fight in the Civil War? Option A and B would be good options if we were American citizens, but we just got here, so they're out of the picture. Option D means that we are just here for the glory and therefore I'm not going to pick it. And I'm going to decide for option C, as we want to experience new adventures and have an interesting career. Before we continue, I have quickly changed our state of origin to New York, as it had a large German-speaking population and many immigrants would arrive at New York Harbor. Therefore, it would be quite fitting that we landed there, got off the boat and immediately enlisted. Which of the following best portrays your reaction if, during the war, you were ordered to do something you thought controversial? Unfortunately, it is not stated what controversial means. It could be a difficult task that endangers our soldiers, but could also mean something like executing prisoners or burning down civilian houses. We simply do not know. And therefore I would object, explaining my moral dilemma to him, hoping he would retract the order. How would you describe your relationship with religion? Well, I'm personally not a religious man, so I'm not religious per se, but try to live according to ethical norms set in my society by the religious community to keep me out of trouble is the right option. If insulted by a fellow officer, how would you most likely react? Well, I would say I would abstain from punching the rascal and offer a fine set of insults back at him instead. There's no reason to simply give ground, but there's also no reason to make the situation worse than it has to be. Which of the following pastime activities do you enjoy the most? Parties, wine, going out with my posse and enjoying life to the fullest, you only live once, is kinda out of the picture. I mean, I do YouTube as a large-scale hobby, so the closest thing is reading books, constructing ships, models and bottles, or other solitary activities where I can relax without too much social pressure, is clearly the way to go here. How do you assume your best friend describes you to someone who does not know you? Well, my friends like me, so they will say a well-liked person of good manners and taste, fitting the social status of an officer and gentleman. Which of the following is most important for an officer commanding men into battle? Well, when we are commanding soldiers in the field, I think personal example to encourage the man, even if it compromises personal safety, is important. Which of the following virtues do you excel at more than others? Well, I'm not a hunter nor a swordsman, and I've never sat on a horse. And of course, in the age of the computer, I'm not writing a lot per hand. So, planning logistics and handling complicated staff work, those are skills soldiers don't know to appreciate until someone faces them, is in my opinion the best option, also because I'm working in an office and this sounds like a lot of office work. If confronted with disagreement among your peers, which of the following reactions describes you best? There's unfortunately not the option to choose a compromise to figure out what is the best way to keep our soldiers safe, so I will choose B here. I remain calm and defend my point of view, even if others try to convince me otherwise. Which of the following do you enjoy the most? Well, I would say watching a fire. I could do that for hours, it soothes me. And it also sounds a lot more fun, like silence, puzzles or impressing others. Which of the following descriptions for Americanism is most accurate in your opinion? I would say it's about breaking shackles and universal equity among all men. Everyone should have equal opportunities, no matter what their background. Unfortunate that this promise has not been held for the majority of America's existence. Other countries also fail to achieve that, of course. Which of the following, in your opinion, is the main cause of this terrible ordeal, the American Civil War? Well, it's of course the evil of slavery, plain and simple, and ending it for good. Which of the following best describes the goals you have for your military career? In this case, I would say I want to have an interesting life full of adventures to see the world. If comparing military career with other possible options, which of the following best describes their benefits? Following our adventurous outlook on the world, we will once again say you get to see the world, to meet interesting people and to kill them if required. Which of the following legendary Americans of recent times do you admire the most? I will pick John Brown, who bravely fought for equity among men. In your opinion, which of the following descriptions best fits the nature of contemporary warfare? Option C, where we are basically preparing for a bayonet charge, and option D, where we are looking at this entire thing like a duel, are clearly out of the picture. And while I think it is important to get around enemy flanks and destroying their communication lines, I will go with option A, Modern weapons have such overwhelming firepower that it is almost impossible to overcome well-prepared defensive positions. Your unit is advancing in open terrain and comes under fire from a well-covered position. The men refuse to advance. What would you do? And as previously established, it is foolish to attack a well-fortified enemy heads-on. Therefore, I would fall back and find a way around the enemy flank. There's no need to engage on the enemy's terms. And also no need to needlessly sacrifice our soldiers. A group of volunteers with overdue contracts refuse to fight when a unit is just about to join battle. What would you do? I would love to pick D, take their weapons and all other military gear and simply let them fight their way home or die trying. But I don't think that this is an option that we can realistically pick. Therefore I'm going to choose B. As all your soldiers are needed in battle, appoint the men without weapons to a regiment of their home state. If they don't want to fight, let it be so. What is the most important role for cavalry in modern war? In this case, option A, C and D are all very valid in my opinion. Still, I think scouting ahead of armies and harassing enemy lines of communication is key. Communications to your commander are lost and an overwhelming enemy force is moving your way. What would you do? In this case, I would say it's wise to prepare to fight a delaying action to avoid high casualties, even if it endangers your commander's battle plan. You were ordered to hold the line, but in front of you there's even better ground. What would you do? I would immediately send skirmishers and engineers to inspect the terrain and a carrier to propose relocating your units to your commander. If our commander doesn't know where we are, it doesn't matter how good the ground is, the position would basically be pointless. But of course, if we get new orders and there's no one on the position to hold it, this ground could already be lost. You're advancing to flank an enemy position, but the men are dead tired. What would you do? We're trying to motivate our men. We dismount and rush forward with a drawn sword and shout "Man off," in this case New York, on me, forward, forward. They will follow their beloved leader to hell if needed. This way we might get the majority of our soldiers on the enemy flank. Which of the following qualities is most important to an officer? And I think the best option here is option C, where we have the ability to think outside the box and are not going to be predictable in battle. Which of the following qualities in an army is most important in winning wars? In this case I'm a bit uncertain if I should choose B or option D. Unity of command and effort, which allows officers of all levels to take initiative according to commander's intent, sounds extremely useful, but I think for now it is better to choose option D. Amateurs study tactics, professionals study supply trains and lines of communications. Without a functioning logistical trail, no campaign will succeed. No army marches on an empty stomach. Which of the following tactical principles is most important in your opinion? We are fighting on the side of the Union, and therefore I would say that prudent maneuvering, consolidating lines of communication and logistical nodes before advancing further could be key. My plan to fight this war would be to push the enemy back one strategic location at a time, consolidate that with fortifications and logistics hubs, and then move forward and forward again and again and again. We have the industrial and the manpower base to do that. This is the final question and you will soon be in combat. If you could do only one of the following before marching out with your unit, which would it be? Well, I would gather the men and say some inspirational words to motivate them. We have a mission to accomplish. The other options are off the table as we have left our friends and family in the old world. And here we have the results of this question marathon. We start with 1300 prestige and $1,250. We have the rank of captain and it says that we got politically assigned. We are seen as a contrarian, possibly because we are an outsider and basically joined up for the adventure. And our belief system is of course seen as outrageous because we are not particularly religious. We are also seen as a radical who wants change and who wants it now. We are somewhat famous, we have a little bit of initiative and leadership skills. Also we have a few points in administration and cunning. All in all, we have a pretty well-rounded character. Let's sign up.
This step, secession, once taken, can never be recalled. We and our posterity shall see our lovely South desolated by the demon of war. Alexander Stephens, Vice President of the Confederate States of America. Chapter 2. the demon of war. The election of Abraham Lincoln, an anti-slavery Republican, as the 16th President of the United States was the last straw, triggering secession. One by one, Southern slave states declared secession from the Union and formed the Confederate States of America, led by President Jefferson Davis. This secession ignited the inevitable escalation, with fruitless efforts to still find a political compromise falling on deaf ears. Advocates of armed insurrection and fire eaters roam the states with steel in their eyes, and the public is aroused to volunteer, to fill the ranks, to quell the rebellion, and to preserve the Union or to secure independence from it. Following open hostilities, President Lincoln's militia call for 75,000 volunteers for 3 months' service, sparks incredulous protest and loud outcry among the southern states. And these sparks set on fire the irreversible. More states secede. Now it's war. 75,000, 100,000, and even more. Soon, the largest armies seen on American soil muster, drill, and prepare for war. A war that is to be neat, short, and limited. The whole matter would be settled by Christmas. But a dark shadow would loom over the growing and inexperienced armies. Without a swift and decisive blow from the very offset of the war, there's every chance of a long, confused, and disorganizing civil war, and even foreign powers may feel a desire to take a hand therein. The time is ticking for the newborn Confederacy. The Union must act. The demon of war has awakened. It seems like the whole of America is mobilizing. Men in great numbers from all corners of the country from Maine all the way down to Texas are mustering to serve their nation, to fight for the America they believe in. Such great armies require great leadership, worthy officers to lead them into battle and to victory. And that's where you come in. First of all, sir, let me congratulate you on your recent promotion and commission. Now, you will be a part of historical events unfolding before our very eyes. The men are looking up to you for your leadership and example, and your superiors for your unwavering obedience in carrying out their orders. Prepare yourself and your unit well, as soon you'll join the columns of men as long as one's eyes can see, marching to the sound of guns to make history. Do well, and maybe one day it'll be you commanding our great armies to victory. And when it's all done, you'll have one hell of a story to tell. But let's not get ahead of things now, sir. It's merely the time to start writing that story of yours. Report to your commander at his headquarters at once for your orders. Make your country proud.
And with this, the main game starts. We are in command of the 38 New York. We have 810 soldiers under our command, and we carry the Springfield musket. Our soldiers have the uniform of a Zouave regiment or maybe light infantry. For now, the majority of our forces have gathered around Washington, and there are more forces up north of the Shenandoah Valley. We have the Army of the Shenandoah and Lee's Division guarding Winchester, and further south we have the Army of the Potomac around Manassas Railroad Junction. After that, the Confederate Army of Virginia is holding Fredericksburg. And if you take a look on the overall front line, right now the war looks a little bit like this. But this is it for our episode 0. Next episode we're going to start with the main part of the game. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and until we meet again, I wish you all a great time.